I accept these cases as being legitimate, why these cases I think are probably hoaxes.
Very interesting what you mentioned before there as well, in terms of the fact that whatever it was in terms of Roswell that came here, traveled all this way and then to crash. The question that arises here is and some of the theories is that it was shot down and so forth. Is there any evidence that seems to suggest this, Kevin?
No, I don't have anything that's shot down. And then we're talking about how radar had knocked it out of the sky, and I'm thinking, gee whiz, you can travel interstellar distances, but a radar beam knocks it out of the sky? I don't think so. But the theory that I've always kind of liked, and it's a very science fiction-oriented theory, is that the aliens discover civilization on the verge of space travel. They want to introduce themselves to the inhabitants of the planet in the most non-threatening way possible. So they crash a disk, put the bodies of some of their fellow spacefarers who may have died on the trip into it, so there's an introduction, and they're thwarted by the U.S. government, who finds the thing, cleans it all up, says, no, it never happened. So their attempt to introduce themselves in a non-threatening way has been trumped by the U.S. government in that respect. Is that a viable theory? Not really, but it's an interesting one, and one that's kind of fun to speculate about. But my point really is this. If you can travel interstellar distances, you probably aren't going to crash with great regularity, but by the same token, no matter how good your technology is, it's going to fail. And if it doesn't fail, there's always, and in the human world, there's always somebody to screw it up, to make a mistake, push the wrong button, hook something up backwards, to cause these catastrophic failures. So there's always that possibility that even though your technology may approach perfection, the biological entities who are driving the thing are capable of making a mistake to bring it down. So I have no problem with accepting one or two possible UFO crashes, but not 300. I mean, they're like raining out of the sky, for God's sakes. If you go to New Mexico and you study New Mexico, you know, they just seem like they were falling out of the sky every other week.
So how about in terms of Roswell? How about bodies and so forth? That someone found 3 bodies and took them away. One allegedly a little bit alive, even. Takes on that.
There were bodies found. We've talked to a number of witnesses who saw them. The skeptics, the debunkers, the deniers always say, well, how many bodies were there? You know, some people say 3, some people say 5, some people say 4. How many bodies were there? Well, the answer is the person who's giving us the number saw that many bodies. You know, it doesn't mean just because one person said he saw 3 and another person said he saw 4, doesn't mean they're both wrong. It means that one person saw 3 and one person saw more. That's not a big problem. Blanchard, Colonel Blanchard, who was the base commander, commander of the 519 bomb group, told a friend of his, Chester Lydell, who was a well-respected scientist and held a number of patents, and they were good friends and worked on a number of projects together. In fact, when Lydell's wife was having a baby, Blanchard, as the commander, arranged to get Lydell from Alaska to Chicago, where the child was going to be born, so he could be there for it. So they were very good friends, and Lydell said that Blanchard told him that there had been bodies. The thing was real, and there had been bodies. So I mean, Lydell was a very respected scientist who would have no point in making something like that up. He says it came from Blanchard. Edwin Easley said the very cryptic thing about the creatures when asked about it, but before he died, told family a little bit more about that. Told his family a little bit more about that. The skeptics and the debunkers, in fact, have tried to denigrate the Easley testimony, and what they've done is confused Easley with Curry Holden and one other fellow who talked about their involvement and lumped all of this to Easley and said, well, see, we can disprove this, this, and this. doesn't detract from easily, and in fact really doesn't detract from the other two guys. But what it does do is make the debunkers and the deniers look bad. But easily talked about that sort of thing. So there have been people that talked about bodies, and just recently they were knocking Frankie Rowe, whose father had been a lieutenant with the fire department in Roswell, who said that her father told her about seeing the bodies and seeing one alive. And they said, well, Frankie Rowe didn't know that. Her father wasn't there, blah, blah, blah. Why doesn't any of the other fire department know about that? And we actually found one of the firefighters from Roswell. He's 90 years old, and went back and interviewed him again and discovered why there was no record of the run from the Roswell Fire Department out to the crash site. And it's because an Air Force officer came to the fire department and said, you don't need to go out there, we got it covered. And Frankie Rowe's father went out there in his private car to look around. And that's why none of the other firefighters knew a thing about it, and that's why there was no run. It's perfect explanation. We just discovered that 6 or 8 months ago, so we can answer that